friends. I just wanted to hop on before the video and give a little content warning. In honor of Self-Harm Awareness Month, Kim Seiper, who is a therapist, and I will be discussing self-harm. And some of the things that we are discussing may be triggering to someone who is sensitive to that. Thanks for tuning in. Hello there. Thanks for tuning in. So I have Kim Seiper here from Blue Lotus Counseling and Wellness Center. Thank you so much for joining me today. So it is Self-Injury Awareness Month. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on today, just so we could ask you some questions about that. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what you do at Blue Lotus.
Okay. So I am the owner of Blue Lotus Counseling and Wellness Center. So we are a small group psychotherapy practice, and we do traditional therapy, counseling for clients, as well as alternative healing modalities such as Reiki and hypnosis and past life regressions. We take a little bit different approach. We do some crystal healing and things like that too, where it's appropriate and where clients are open to that. So it gives us a little bit of a different edge than maybe somebody else because of the way that we approach our healing. And we do have somebody also on staff who does some acupuncture, so ear acupuncture to work on different disorders as well. So
yeah, so that really gives you a lot of tools in your toolbox.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We at Clearly Balanced Days are all about mental health, access to resources, and really talking about what there is out there for different modalities, different types of approaches and things like that. So it's really great to talk to somebody like you. You're offering so many different kinds of things on top of your traditional therapies and stuff like that. So
Thank you.
very, very cool. So like I said, March is Self-Injury and Self-Harm Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
And I've personally known many people over the years who have dealt with this in their lives, especially when I was young. A lot of people that had this experience in their lives when they were young and have maybe evolved away from that. Statistically speaking, this behavior starts most often around 13 years old, and it occurs in teens of all sexes, but it most often occurs in girls. Do you see this a lot in your practice?
I do. I don't often have gentlemen that come in and talk about self-harm. However, males also self-harm. So generally 1 in 5 females and 1 in 7 males. So it's really not too far off. But what I think happens is they don't report it or they're not seeking help, because men in general tend to not seek therapy as often as females do. So I'm sure that the numbers are much higher than we think that they are. It's just not being reported.
Right. And they could manifest themselves in a different way. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yes, about 90% of people who do engage in some kind of self-harm behavior do start around the age of 13, 14. So, and they'll continue through their teen years and all the way until adulthood. I have some clients that are adults now that still struggle with this. So.
Wow. Now, is it considered its own mental health disorder?
No, it is a symptom or a coping skill for other mental health disorders. So it's really, self-harm is about, it's an unhealthy coping skill to be able to deal with emotions that, the person doesn't want to have. So they either could be really intense emotions, or they could be feeling really numb. Also, perhaps they want to punish themselves, or they're seeking attention. Or they're just wanting some sense of belonging with a group of other teens too. So generally it is used as a way to deal with their emotions, to regulate their emotions. It is not considered its own disorder, but it's associated with several disorders. So typically we see self-harm almost always coincide with someone who is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So in our diagnostic manual, self-harm behavior is one of the 6 criteria you have to have in order to be diagnosed with that. Also, you'll see it in a lot of clients with depression, anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, and then for younger kids, you'll see it with conduct and oppositional defiance disorders. So kids that are really acting out, violent kids, things like that at a young age. It's,
Interesting. So it's
it's
something
a
that,
symptom.
yeah. So it's something that if, if a parent was seeing that in their child starting to happen, it might be something that maybe teaching them some better coping skills, getting them into therapy and stuff would definitely be.
Absolutely, absolutely, because the child really doesn't know what else to do. All that they know is that self-harm is allowing them to either feel or not feel. I mean, that's usually what people come in and say. Like they either don't want to feel the feelings that they have, or they feel so numb that they just want to feel something. And inflicting pain upon themselves does that.
Interesting.
So it's definitely a red flag that there's something more going on for a parent or a friend or loved one to see that that their child or a friend is not able to regulate their own emotions. They're
Yeah.
struggling with something that they can't share, or or there could be a multitude of reasons.
Interesting. Is it a form of a suicidal behavior?
No, not really. But that's usually the myth, is that they're trying to to kill themselves, but
Mhm.
it's not typically the case. They're really that they're trying to make sense of their emotions.
Yeah.
You know, it's not uncommon though that somebody could cut too deep and accidentally suicide, but it is not usually the intent.
Well, that's reassuring for a parent that's starting to see some of that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
can it evolve into substance abuse?
Um, I don't know if it can evolve into it necessarily. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but they're like two different coping skills.
Yeah.
Substance is a different kind of coping skill. So I don't necessarily think that they're linked per se, because there's a lot of people that use substances as a coping skill but have never self-harmed.
Mm.
So they don't always go hand in hand. And I don't think it's like a doorway to substance use necessarily.
Right. So, like many of these things, it's not quite cut and dry. It doesn't
No.
necessarily one lead to the other.
No,
That's good.
no.
Uh,
One thing that is important to note is typically about 50% of people who do engage in some kind of self-harm behavior have experienced some form of sexual abuse as a child or at some point in their life. So there is that correlation.
oh man, yeah, and that would explain why emotional regulation might be a little off kilter,
Exactly.
not working.
Exactly. Yeah. They experienced something very traumatic
Mm.
and had to deal with it then, and maybe still haven't processed it.
Yeah.
Right. So the emotions, the memories come up, and they don't want to think about it or whatever, and they'll cut to try to distract or to not feel or to feel. So
Yeah, to just get the brain to do something different other than whatever painful thing is happening for them.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I read a study in 2019 found that people who were exhibiting this behavior were shown to have less activity in the amygdala in the brain, which houses our most reactive emotions, and were shown to produce less of the stress hormone cortisol. And this is really the opposite of what I would have thought.
Yeah. So the amygdala is the part of our brain that regulates our emotions, and especially our negative emotions. So typically, yes, it's our pleasure center too, the amygdala. So when we deal with addiction work, it's all housed in the amygdala, one of the oldest parts of our brain. If we like to, it's, how do we explain this? It's sort of it's innate, the raw emotions in that area. So what has been found is that teens, for whatever reason, who self-harm, well, not just self-harm, teens in general actually have lower levels of stress than other people. And as a parent myself, I think that's kind of an interesting thought, because I would think my kids are under a lot of stress, especially now with everything going on. But what generally, self-harm teens have less stress than others, and they have a high pain threshold. And so that would make sense as to why the cortisol levels are lower, because that's our fight or flight, our stress response.
Right.
And so when we have, active levels of cortisol, it drives our sense of pleasure, excitement, our drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we have lower cortisol, we tend to be slower, detached, more sluggish. And our body can naturally balance that homeostatic cycle
Yeah.
throughout the day. And so what's happening with people who self-harm is, because they have a lower cortisol, right? There are lower levels of stress, and they have all these feelings that they're having. If they harm themselves and inflict pain, right, it will throw the body into a sense of fear, like it needs to increase its stress response to, because it thinks it's being attacked, right? And
Yeah.
so they're trying to increase the cortisol and at the same time reduce the feelings that they're having.
Mm.
So this is all subconscious. The child does not realize this is what's going on, but this is why we see this research and these numbers that seem off compared to maybe an average healthy person.
Yeah.
They might respond. So it's actually really interesting, but the whole idea is just to regulate emotions.
Right. It's almost like an instinct to balance out those hormones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's innate though, like they don't realize that's what they're doing, but that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. As a company, we hear from people often who are looking to use CBD for hormonal imbalances because of the balancing properties CBD can have with the endocannabinoid system. Have you found this as well with our products?
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of clients that use the CBD for anxiety and a variety of disorders, and especially sleep and such. So people do seek it out. I promote it because I see there's a benefit in it for sure. To just bring some sense of balance. If they've tried other things and their regular coping skills aren't working, I will often suggest try this too, because if we can get your sleep in order, that's like your baseline, right? If you can have good sleep, then generally we're going to be in a better mood. We're going to feel healthier. There's so many things that can come off of that. So,
and our tools are going to work better. That's the
absolutely.
Thing. Yeah.
They'll be more readily available because we'll be able to access them easier. So, for sure. One thing I think that might be important to note for viewers is the types of self-harm there is, because there's a variety. And so that might help people to know what to look for. So the most common that we always hear about is cutting. The most common that we hear about, but it's not necessarily the most common that's practiced. Okay, so the most common practice is actually scratching or pinching as a self-harm. So this would be people who are, like severely scratching themselves or pinching with their fingernails to the point of bleeding. Okay, so about 50% of people who self-harm use that technique. Okay. Another is impact with objects. So this would be like banging or punching objects like the wall or whatever to the point of bruising or bleeding. Okay. Yeah. Then there's cutting, which is about 30% of people that would cut. And they would cut in a variety of places, usually where people don't see. So, anywhere that can be covered, usually. Yeah. Okay. Another type of self-harm method is impact with oneself. So banging their head against a wall or doing something like that that's going to inflict harm to themselves, but not with an object per se. Okay. Ripped skin. So ripping or tearing at their skin is another thing that could happen. Carving, which is it's about 15% of people might carve words or symbols into their skin. Interfering with healing. So this would be people who pick at their wounds and don't allow them to heal. That's also a form of self-harm. Burning, burning with cigarettes, anything like that. So that's about 12% of people might use that. Rubbing other objects into the skin, like pieces of glass or anything like that just to scratch instead of using your own hand.
Yeah.
The last is hair pulling. So people who might pull out their hair or eat their hair is also considered a self-harm behavior. So I think it's important for people to understand that there's more than just cutting. It can be a lot of different things. And some of these things can be easily excused, like scratching or pinching. Someone might say, well, my cat really scratched me hard, or, I fell down, or something like that. Those are things to be aware of, that could be excuses, but could be signs to look for. Yeah. If they're hurting their skin, wearing long sleeves when it's hot out, makes sense. Things that are unexplainable, bruises, scratches, scars, anything like that might be cause to pause and question what might be going on with your child.
Right, right. And time to maybe make sure that they have better coping skills, right?
Right, right, absolutely. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was important. Another thing is to also be aware of is that people who self-harm tend to use anywhere between 2 and 4 different techniques. So they don't necessarily stick with one.
It's a
So
little easier to hide, I bet,
figured
that way.
out with one, they might switch to something else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, changing spots, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ugh. What advice would you start with for young people who might be dealing with this?
Ask for help, for the kids, right? Like they're not alone. Um, but that, there's a reason that, I mean, and they generally know what's going on. So like just try to find somebody that you feel like you can trust to talk to would
Yeah.
be ideal. If it's not a parent, maybe it's a teacher or a friend that you trust or a friend's mom or something like that. But just trying to reach out to somebody.
Right. Right. And knowing that there's nothing, it's okay not to be all right, and that there are people that can help you to figure out a better
Absolutely.
way to regulate
Absolutely.
things and
Yeah.
feel better.
And there's a reason that they're feeling the way they are. And
Yeah.
other ways that they can help manage those emotions without hurting themselves.
Yeah. With a parent that's encountering this, how does a parent, I feel like it's something that could be easily explained away or easily discounted, that what you're doing is attention seeking and things. How do we keep that maybe my child is doing this and I recognize it as an attention seeking behavior. It wouldn't be right to treat it as such, though, right? Because it's a valid thing. Like, if they're doing that for attention, they're still having an issue that they need to.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, as a parent, trying to just try to stay as calm as possible, try to accept that there's a reason that the behavior is going on, even though you're not accepting the behavior. I mean, that's kind of clear to say, like, you're validating that there's something going on to your child, but not saying it's okay to cut your arm.
Right.
But knowing that this is the only way your child knows how to deal with whatever emotional pain that they're going through, right? So trying to listen with compassion is really, really important, and not overreacting. Try to avoid any panic. I know that can be hard if you see blood. There's first aid that needs to happen, but trying not to threaten or be revulsed, or shocked at what you see. Like, just try to maintain your composure as best you can.
Right.
Inside you might be freaking out, but outside keep your
Keep it on the
be
inside.
compassionate, right?
Yeah.
And one thing, to try not to ask too many questions about what their experience was, because if you ask them to reiterate in detail what they did, it might re-trigger them. So that's kind of important. So, and then really just try to seek mental health, a professional of some sort, and hopefully your child is willing to go. But that's really going to be the best bet, is to have that child feel comfortable to be able to talk to somebody about whatever's going on for them.
Yeah.
And trying to be as supportive as possible.
Yeah. And it's important to, get that ball rolling in the right direction before, we don't want these things to fester or
Exactly.
any longer than they already have.
Yep. And as you talked about with attention seeking, that could be what the behavior is that they're exhibiting, but you don't want to call them out and say, oh, you're just trying to get my attention.
Right.
Because that's not solving the problem.
Right.
There's something deeper than that going on. So
yeah. And you could easily make it something that they're trying harder to hide rather than opening up to you about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very important stuff. So it is important to bring it up, right? So
absolutely.
Could a parent, and so actually you just covered that, so I'm going to leave that alone, because you said exactly You said it, so I'll cut that out. So we know that talking about these challenges is vital to confronting the problem and getting the person back on track toward healing. What's one thing we could do if we have a friend who might need some help dealing with this? How do we be present and show up for our friends when we're seeing that?
I think just asking if they need help or if there's anything they want to talk about, and then just listening.
That's a big
Try
one.
not to solve their problems. Most of the time when people are struggling, they just want to be heard and
Mhm.
don't want people to tell them how to fix it. They just want to be validated that what they're feeling is real.
Yeah.
So I think reaching out and just saying, hey, I noticed something's going on with you. I'm here to talk if you'd like to, or it makes sense that, you might feel frustrated or upset. You've been going through a lot lately. Like that's validating to them.
Right.
Maybe then they would feel able to open up. But I think just offering help, so many times people are afraid, to offer help.
Or
Because,
say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing.
right, they're afraid of what they might say might do something worse, or maybe they don't even know how to help, so they don't want to even go there.
Mm.
But oftentimes, all people that are struggling really just need to feel like people care,
Right.
you know,
Right.
whatever they're struggling with.
I would say to that too personally, as someone who's dealt with a lot of depression, especially when I was young, asking the why can be problematic. Why do you
Sure.
feel this way? Why, what's wrong? Those sorts of questions can be really, it's a really easy way to shut someone down. So it's important.
Absolutely. Because they probably don't know. They just probably don't know. They've closed it off. I mean, maybe they know, but they may not want to tell you.
Right,
Oftentimes, people really in that deep, dark place just don't feel good and they don't know why.
right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
try to stay away from the why. Just say that you're there for them. You'll be supportive, anything that they need, and encourage them to get help.
right, right. There are lots of resources. I will definitely make sure that I put some of the, suicide hotline and stuff. I'll put that into the description of this video. So on another note, I know many therapists and practitioners are seeing a huge uptick in people seeking help. Are you seeing this too?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, with COVID, it has changed the ball game. Um, yes, it is very difficult right now, unfortunately, to get in somewhere that is taking new clients. So it just, people are coming out of the woodwork with being home and everything for a year now, which is great that they're finally seeking help, because I'm getting a lot of calls for people who've never been in therapy before and just feel like now is the time. So that doesn't mean don't try.
Right. Don't give up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for people that are trying to seek help specifically for this, for self-harm or for their child, I would encourage them to go on to the psychologytoday.com website. It's our biggest referral source, but for what the parent can do is they can plug in they look under find a therapist, plug in your zip code. This is a nationwide referral source. So plug in your zip code, and then all of the therapists within that zip code will pop up. Then there's a filter at the top called issues. If you click on that, you can then check off self-harm. And now it will filter down to all the therapists that specialize in self-harm or are confident in working with a population with that issue. Another thing to look at would be the types of treatment. Dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, is one that was created initially for people with borderline personality disorder to deal with self-harm behaviors.
Hmm.
And it has since now opened up into being used for pretty much any disorder. I think it's wonderful. I think everybody should be taught DBT in middle school because it teaches emotion regulation, mindfulness, like cognitive behavioral therapy type things with thoughts, feelings, behaviors, communication, interpersonal relationships. There's so many different aspects of that therapy style that can really help people who struggle with self-harm. So on that Psychology Today website, you can check off different modalities. And if you find DBT as one, you can check that off too, and find the therapist that really would hopefully help with that particular situation.
Right. And you could even filter it more too to find people that maybe they specialize in LGBT stuff, or, you know,
Exactly.
whatever
Yeah.
other things they might be dealing with, they can
Uh-huh.
really get
They
that.
can also sort by insurance. So if you're on Medicaid, check off Medicaid, and then only people who accept Medicaid will pop up. So it really saves time in just, opening the old phone book in the old days, right? And just literally going down the list and trying to find a name and somebody that's hopefully taking the clients. So it is
Yeah.
a struggle right now, but just keep trying. Things change. Clients stop and start all the time. So you never know. And there's wait lists that you can get on, and they'll call you back when there's an opening.
Yeah, and there's some telehealth stuff that's available
Mhm.
now. There's like
Yes.
websites you can try.
Yeah.
But I would definitely encourage people to go on to Psychology Today. That's how I found my own therapist, and it's nice just having the pictures. You can kind of see if it's somebody you can kind of
Yeah.
jive with. That's
Read their bio.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's a huge resource that I love to recommend to people. So.
Great.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been like very eye-opening, and something that, like I said, I've had a lot of friends and family over the years that have dealt with some of this stuff, and it's really nice to have a perspective on it, so I understand it a little better, and so I feel like I can show up a little bit better for someone if I find this again, in their lives or whatever. So
Wonderful. Good. Well, thank you for
yeah,
having me.
yeah.
I
So thank you
appreciate it.
very much.